You'll have to pardon us for everyone that's on the phone because this is our first virtual SIM meeting for the Charlotte chapter. And our intention really is to continue doing these go forward should there be, some interest in it. So we'll talk about that toward the end. Obviously, the focus of tonight is going to be on COVID-19 and all the craziness that's going on in our world. But we'd like to use this as a forum to stay connected across our membership on topics in between meetings and in-person events and so forth like that when life gets back to normal. So we'd love your input and thoughts and ideas on how to make that successful going forward. So I'll open it up. Tom is really going to do the heavy lifting in terms of moderating and running the Zoom conference bridge. But I did want to say, welcome to our first virtual town hall. And on behalf of the SIM board and myself, I sincerely hope that each of you and your families are staying really safe and healthy and sane through these days.
Sane, I don't know.
I know, I'm a homeschool teacher and, all sorts of things. So we wanted to bring you guys, our members, together to connect, first off as people, and then as technology leaders for our community. We've got a big job, and certainly during any crisis, there's opportunity to share thoughts and ideas and do the right thing. So as we deal with uncertainties with our companies and employees and clients, and then our families, and just overall life as we know it, I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to at least come together and discuss and share and just have a forum as part of our membership and our SIM family. So we might not know what the future holds, but sharing ideas and strategies all help us. So with that, I will turn it over to Tom. But once again, I do wish each of you to remain safe and rely on the community that we've built as far as membership goes, and bouncing ideas off of each other, or just saying hello, or staying connected virtually throughout this time until we can all get back together in person again. So Tom, if you don't mind taking it over, I'd appreciate it.
Happy to do that. Thanks for kicking us off and getting us together. I think we got pulled into a meeting with SIM National. Was that last week, John, that we did that?
Seems like a lot longer than that, but yeah, it was last week. Yes, sir.
I know, right? It's kind of nutty.
Thursday or Friday or something.
It was, yeah. And it does seem like a lifetime ago, but it was really just a few days ago, and we started talking about some of the challenges that people were facing with getting organized and planning and driving some of these things, and so it was cathartic at some level to talk about that. And some of the other folks who were on that call said that it was helpful to get a chance to connect with other people because we're so disconnected from others right now. So, we kind of kicked that around with the board, and we said we'd like to have a conversation with our other folks here in the community about, kind of how things are going and what's going on. And the one thing, my wife and I have talked about is we kind of looked at each other and we said, we really dialed back the stuff that we've been doing, but we're exhausted. Would you guys say it's been exhausting the last 2 weeks? I've been wiped out, man. And I feel like
I have been too. Almost mentally exhausting on top of exhausting trying to juggle schedules. Yeah.
Right, because it's all the regular stuff that we're trying to do, but then we also have to do it in a weird way, and there's this unknown that's kind of hanging over our heads. And I'm wondering about how many folks are working remotely now. I mean, obviously as of an hour ago, right? We're all working remotely now, right? What kind of challenges have your teams run into from that?
Tom, you mean after the tsunami of help desk calls to figure out how to get remote access to work? It hasn't been tested in 6 months or a year? Yeah. That was problem number one. I think problem number two is fighting for Netflix bandwidth over the home internet connection with the other streamers in the house.
Yeah, well, that's a challenge too, because I'm not a TV watcher, but I sure would take any of your recommendations on what to watch these days. But latency, I've experienced that on Zoom and just phone calls in general. So even I'm used to working remote 100% of the time, but working with others and having just that influx has been a little bit impactful to communications.
Yeah. This is my 4th Zoom meeting today, and I have to say I need to get up and walk around.
Right. Or buy Zoom stock, one of the two.
Or both.
Yeah.
Get up and call your broker.
Yeah, only 4. I'm disappointed.
And Pete, we had a very similar experience where out of 5,000 people who work on the campus, about 1,000 were pretty hardcore or telecommuters or remote traveler type people. So they were geared up to go. But we added about another 3,000 people to that category who just don't know how to do it. They've never done it. They might not even have a mobile device. So it was the gear up. We had the capacity, we had the ability, but it was gearing up and taking care of the external or the end user so they could start to function again in a different way. That was the challenge that was probably still the most significant. It's the help desk queue.
A scale issue.
We have the capacity. It's just introducing it to new people, and it takes a while, particularly now that they're forced to be remote. So it makes for some really long calls with end users to get them functional. And so with fixed capacity for how many people we could throw on the support desk, that became the long pole in the tent for us.
Well, the last company I was with, I was talking to them, and they had mentioned getting laptops to people. So when you're trying to have people leave, you're trying to ramp up. So you've got all your desktop support people scrambling to see how they get them equipment and stuff like that. So they had hundreds to deliver.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chip. There's a couple of companies that I've been working with in town that are smaller, and they're mostly office-based, and they're really not set up, even though they do have capacity for remote. And watching them scramble to go from thin clients and desktops to try and procure a bunch of laptops when there are none to be had.
Yikes.
Dell's not shipping to small numbers anytime soon. It's been very interesting to watch this scramble go on to try and get themselves set up to, okay, now I've got to go home for real. What am I going to do?
Well, I had a client say that they were trying to figure out what they were going to do because their remote access tools, they didn't have enough licenses for people to access it remotely. They could access it from inside the office, but they didn't have access for outside the office without paying an additional fee. And one of the guys said to me, "Oh, well, we all have static IP addresses. So what we can do is we could put a port forwarder on our router for each person's laptop and have them remote desktop into the Oh, God.
We stopped doing that years ago.
Amen, brother. Yeah.
Well, that's not a story I could tell to very many groups. So I appreciate y'all for letting me tell that story.
I've got one story too that my son works for a bank up in New York City, and they're in their 3rd week. They're calling it crisis management, obviously, business continuity, and that the same issue was popping up that I think Chip was talking about. So a number of them went to their corporate office and getting them approved laptops, making sure the security was on there. Do they have the connectivity? Was just an ongoing event, thousands of calls and so forth to finally settle it down. I'm talking to him yesterday, and it's finally kind of settled down for him. So a different scale than what Pete was mentioning, but yeah, it's something. How do you get 100% of your workforce to work from home office is, the headline for it. And, you just work through it and all the issues keep popping up for them.
John, how did your daughter's teaching go? Wasn't your daughter do some teaching?
On the other end of the scale, my daughter's a kindergarten teacher, and they're starting to interact with the kids one-on-one. She learned Zoom. She attended a couple seminars herself. The kids have been given special Chromebooks and so forth. But then, we're country flat out here in just east of Columbia. So they had to make sure they had the internet. So they've got buses equipped with, so they could get a signal. And so she just started this today. They've delayed it, and the idea is they're going to do one-on-one with the kids, spend 30 minutes to 45 minutes with them, because they have to start their, they got their plans, their teaching plans have got to be done so they can start marching through the work. So,
Wow.
The issue, of course, how do you get that level? And surprisingly, she's saying some of them are, they're okay with it. I mean, what's the big deal, Dad? Her mom. Here's how you do that.
John,
Connect,
you hit a
not a
couple
big deal.
things.
But the other issues came into play. So that's just starting, Karen. Thanks for asking that.
John, you hit a couple things there I think are worth pointing out. I know from the school thing, I've got a daughter in high school and a daughter in college that are now both sequestered here and are both doing everything online. We're fortunate that both schools have transitioned to that. But I look at it and say, okay, I've got a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old that are both struggling with the same types of problems. And if any generation should be able to just hop online and do it, it should be them. And they're encountering some of the same challenges. So I think we just need to recognize that it's going to be a rough road, especially for people who aren't living in a digital world day to day, number one. Number two, use the term business continuity. And one of the things we started doing late last week is we brought the leaders of each department and some other key people together every day at the end of the day. And the reason I was late to this call is because we were wrapping up that meeting. So we have a business continuity meeting. And it's an opportunity for everybody to say, hey, what's working, what's not? Because I think sometimes we internalize these types of things and figure, okay, IT's got to address this issue, when the reality is this is the best time for shadow IT ever. So, we want everybody to share ideas. We want people to kind of come and help with the solution. And if we're not talking with other leaders around the organization about what's working and what's not, it's going to be harder to disseminate information or to gather good ideas to allow us to react.
Well, and speaking of those good ideas, I think one of the things that I wanted to try and get us to have an opportunity to do is experiment with some of these things that are new for us. We saw with the SIM National meeting, there was an issue with getting that meeting kicked off because some people didn't have the right URL for the meeting. They get the wrong invite. These things happen, and then there were some tech challenges. It took a little bit to get started and work through. And so I want to encourage you, if you've got a camera, to try and experiment with that. Go ahead and turn it on if you can. The other thing I want to do is we're trying this new virtual format. I want to make it as interactive as possible. So it's my understanding that there's this really snazzy breakout room feature. And what I thought we would do is tee up some questions and then give you guys maybe 10 minutes to talk about some of those questions inside a breakout room. And then after that, maybe we come back and share some good learnings and good points from that. So what I'll do is I'll post these questions in the chat and then I'll kick off the breakout. But basically what I'm going to be asking you guys to talk about and pick somebody to facilitate that in your breakout room is what's been harder than you expected, what's been easier than you feared it might be, and what's a lesson you've learned. And I think these are things to kind of help us on that journey. All that is posted right in the chat window. But I think it'd be helpful for us to kind of kick that around and get some feedback from each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put about 5 people or 6 people in each room, and we're going to kick this off, and we'll come back in about 10 minutes. So here we go. Hope nothing terrible happens. Open all rooms. There we go.
Tom, I hit the wrong button. I left my work group hanging.
Yeah, I did too. I did a click, an error click.
Jeffrey, you were talking and you left us, honey.
I know, it was an error click.
We were like, where'd he go? That's okay.
Well, but see, that's one of the things that's beautiful about this is we get it to low risk opportunity to make this work.
Well, I appreciate it, Tom, because I'm doing some Zoom workshops that are free to anybody who wants to join. And so I'll send that over to Sim. I guess I'll send that to Deidre. And gosh, I don't know how to do breakouts. It's just such a trial and error thing. I decided on to
Yep.
my first workshop over Zoom on Thursday. So it's pretty funny. And we're still trying to figure out how to invite people and the best way to manage the list and things like that. So, but that's also the good news in that I get to create some new material for people that will be helpful moving forward, I believe.
Well, and that's a really good point, Paula, because we face that even as a sim board, trying to figure this out. How would we do it? Should we use TicketLeap? Should we use Eventbrite? How would we go about changing it over? That kind of stuff. And that was a bunch of scrambling. And kudos to Rachel for being willing to dig in and kind of figure out Eventbrite setup over the weekend to be able to get this ready to get out the door for us. I know this was a short notice meeting, but I think a lot of folks are scrambling through those same kinds of issues. And even then we had to ask, well, how often do we need to send reminders, or what, who's going to show up, those kinds of things. So I'm curious to hear from the folks that were in the breakout rooms. Was that a useful thing to do in a Zoom meeting like this?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
You did great, Tom. I'm so
Cool.
glad you handled it, because if I was left up to that, I don't think it would have went quite that smooth.
It's the tool.
Well
it's
done.
the tool. It has nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
Well done.
someone who knows how to operate it. I've just been in a different Zoom meeting, and there we were stuck in those meeting rooms, and no one knew how to pull us back. So good job.
So you broke out and you never returned, huh?
I think we did have one little hiccup though, Tom, with Elizabeth, right? Maybe you told them already. She was showing up on our video, but she wasn't talking. We thought we were kind of taking it personally, but then she chatted us and said that she was on somebody else's audio room.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. I guess that sort of thing happens from time to time, right?
Just kidding, Elizabeth. We know you'd never not want to speak to us.
No, absolutely not. It was split personality thing going on there.
So look at Pete Murphy. Look at that. Grabbing notes from the conversation, posting it to the group chat. Man, he is on it.
Teacher's pet.
Well, that makes one, Tom.
He's looking for Tom's approval.
That's
Great.
it.
So I'm curious, what was something that surprised you that you heard in your group?
You know,
In our group?
one of the things.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, John, I think you said it, that we all have probably learned to quickly adapt to a variety of different virtual platforms, and it hasn't been that big of a deal as long as we're not doing crazy stuff like virtual breakout rooms and stuff. I've been able to use a lot of them, some that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah. Skype was one I came back to just yesterday. Somebody requested that. I said, geez, I remember that. Oh yeah, okay, it does still work. How about that?
That's still a thing?
Yeah.
Somebody else, what's something that surprised you in the conversation?
One thing
I think somebody in our group mentioned.
Go ahead, Pete.
So somebody in our group had mentioned, I don't remember exactly who it was, but it's something I'd totally forgotten about, is the fact that all the paper processes that some companies run on really don't translate well to going digital or remote.
Yeah, that was me.
And some
Yeah,
of the
they don't
difficulties,
translate well at all.
Yeah, some of the difficulties some of their clients or customers or whatever are having, just even if they have the capability to be remote, they can't actually work because their processes are actually manual and paper based. And we all know that, but I'd kind of swept that away in the modernization and digitization of our companies and thought that's really not a big problem. But yeah, it still is a real problem for a lot of companies.
Yeah. So a couple of things related to that. I think this is probably going to drive some modernization, some tech upgrades for sure, right? This will force some investments in those areas. To that end, one of the things I heard in the group was somebody had to order thousands of laptops to be enabled remote work from home. That probably accelerated some desktop refresh program for somebody, right?
Well, it actually stopped desktop refresh because a lot of the laptops that would have come in would have been for move to Windows 10 replacements, and they would have had to use those laptops to give to other users so they could go home instead. So that pretty much would delay anybody's Windows 7 or Windows 10 upgrades during this time if they had to use laptops to do the conversion.
In a previous life, I was responsible for enterprise desktop engineering. So that just hurt my heart a little bit when I go, oh crap. It sounds like a big hassle. So somebody else, what's something that surprised you in the conversation we had so far?
So I enjoyed hearing from Anya that she and her manufacturing company, like ours, are having all kinds of interesting supply chain issues and all kinds of communication issues around different states issuing, work from home or stay in place type things. We were deemed, as they were, to be an essential industry, but it seems like the communication has been unclear. When you're like we are in Charlotte at the headquarters, the hub that everyone reports to, there's a lot of chaos going on that we were trying to help sort and coordinate. And I'm sure we're going to be doing that for a while yet.
Interesting. Somebody else, something surprising or unexpected that you heard in the conversation?
The only thing I would bring up is bandwidth at houses. My sister, for example, had to institute a policy of no Netflix watching or streaming from 9 to 5 but she couldn't do a video conference call. So if anyone is doing any type of wireless support, network support, it could be a good time to make a lot of money right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alan Fitzpatrick might want to talk to some folks about doing community broadband, right?
Well, exactly. And I think because they live in an older neighborhood, their fiber optics and all that stuff aren't up to date. I'm in a newer neighborhood, so I think I'm fortunate, but I could see that being an issue.
Well, I live out in the woods, and so getting copper in the dirt is a big deal out here. And so I'm grateful that I've got cable modem. But if the cable modem goes down, I'm done. Right? That's I mean, because what am I going to do? Go to DSL?
Well, and my sister's cell phone coverage is terrible at their house, so she can't tether onto her cell phone either. So, anyways, I thought that was interesting. Something I didn't think about.
So I'm curious about what was something that somebody brought up that was easy or easier than expected. I'm interested in hearing that.
For me, I felt like there was this space that opened up in my life. And in a sense, it was easier than I expected, in part because I really do. The reason why I do the work on mindset that I do is because my mind needs a lot of resetting. And because I do the work, I felt like it was a little easier, that I really welcomed the time out, and I was trying not to focus on what wasn't working. So that part was a little easier for me. But keep in mind that some of the points previous, my network's been updated, so I don't have any issues, and I have nobody else but me at home. No animals, no other people. So I'm not competing. And there isn't. I would imagine there's a lot of navigation going on with families. Who gets what time on the TV or on Netflix or computers, as you were mentioning before, Todd. So so the adjustment's been a bit bigger than I thought in some respects.
How many people have kids in like college or still living with you? I'm trying to get them out, but there's some. They work from home too.
I got 8 of them at my house. I got 8 of them at my house.
Oh my gosh.
Good luck, Chip. Yeah.
Tom wins.
I have little ones. So we've been working with, CMS on their Google Classrooms and Canvas, and they're doing a pretty good job, keeping in contact. So
yeah,
I'll tell you, I've been reading that some parents feel like it's really showing their kids just how stupid they are because they really can't help them much with their homework and assignments. So, thank God I don't have any in my house.
there you go.
There's a whole bunch of kids learning to carry the 1 in math.
Yeah.
I will tell you though that if you do have older kids and they want to occupy themselves, especially college students, like like tutoring opportunities are something that would, paid tutoring opportunities would be something if you have a
What a great
child
idea.
yeah, because my daughter, for example, does literacy tutoring. Well, her teacher can't do that anymore. She's just overloaded schedule-wise. This is a separate teacher. So we're looking for somebody, and I've seen a lot of parents posting about that.
Interesting.
As a funny aside, my daughter is 18 and she's taking a project management class. And she came to me and she said, Dad, how do I do this critical math or critical path diagram? And I looked at it and I said, I don't know, sweetheart. We don't do that in professional project management. We do it a different way. And she's like, gee, thanks.
That's funny. So what's something that, what's a lesson that you learned, that you heard somebody talk about that was a good lesson from this?
I don't think we specifically talked about it, but I think we would all agree that it's really important that we respect each other and show patience out there within our teams, within our families, really importantly within the education system with teachers. I can't imagine being a teacher responsible for teaching classes while having kids that are attending classes. So that would be my point.
Okay.
Well, I totally agree with you, Betsy. And I would say, just to add on to that, just if we can all, and I think everybody here does it, it probably goes without saying, but just an extra measure of kindness and whatever we can do to show people that you care about them outside of just the day-to-day grind of work. Ask people, how are they doing, kind of thing. I had to call AT&T the other day to change something on my account, and the gentleman I got connected with was in the Philippines, and I just asked him, how are you doing? And boy, he just opened right up. He's been in quarantine for over a month now, and
wow,
just having that human compassion, just to ask somebody how they're doing on a personal level.
That's really good. Another lesson learned?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we are all globally under the same kind of circumstances, and I kind of mentioned this in the group session, but one of the things is you feel compassionate with all the others around you. And even, when during our meetings with different people, in the past, when you're working from home and you're taking kind of a meeting and something is happening like in the background and, your kids are shouting or your dog is barking or something, and you feel kind of embarrassed.
Never happens. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. You'll feel kind of embarrassed and, all these kind of things. But now, with everyone kind of under the same circumstances, you kind of feel compassionate about it. And, it's all right. It's okay. Hey, if my kids are in the background yelling or someone else in the background has some other noises and stuff or the line drops, it feels, that, hey, I want to support you, I want to help you. It's okay. Don't worry about it. That's fine. So this was kind of one of the things that kind of I learned from this experience is everyone is running the same thing. They have the same challenges, and being compassionate with everyone is really important at this point.
One of the things I was going to comment on was, I think this falls under the easier is telehealth. And my wife had a doctor's appointment Monday, and we called Monday morning and said, "No, we're going to make the trip." And they said, "Well, let's do a telehealth." Okay. Worked real fine. Saved about, hour round trip, half hour there, half hour back, hour and a half at the damn doctor's office. Took like 15 minutes. That's a lot easier. Now we got one coming up Thursday, probably about similar scale. And so then I'm learning from my insurance buddies that VA is giving thumbs up on it. We live in a neighborhood where about 1 out of 5 are retired VA out here. They're excited about it. And then I understand Medicare and others are supporting it as well. So gosh, I'd like to see that as a trend. And but hopefully the health care is just as good, but boy, it sure makes it one heck of a lot easier than
Well, and I think
alternative.
I think it's a good point, John, and it's something we've touched on a little bit in our conversation this evening. But I think it's worthwhile for us to investigate a little bit. What do you think is going to be transformational on a go forward basis? What do you think? Because every crisis brings with it opportunity, and so if we're looking at this and we're trying to figure out how do we position ourselves for success going forward, there will be things that will be different. Air travel was dramatically changed after 9/11. I remember going to the airport one time and I was going through security and they stopped me because I had a box cutter in my bag, and this was in the 90s, and I went, what would I do with a box cutter? This is not dangerous. But surely after 9/11, that game changed, right? And so, the same thing was true after 2008. The same thing is going to be true after this. So what do you think what are the opportunities ahead of us as technology people that we could start to facilitate and help with going forward in our businesses? So what do you think are opportunities for us?
I think that people are, if you're in a small business, let's say today in Mecklenburg County, they went to the shutdown mode where businesses have to shut down. So, and you can do limited things. That starts on Thursday and it lasts until April 16th. So you've got companies and small businesses that can't open their doors, and that's going to impact them. Do they have some kind of footprint where they can sell, or do you have to go in the store? It kind of leads to the point that a lot of them, no matter if you're even smaller, you're going to need that digital ability to sell if your doors have to shut. So that kind of leads them down that path. The telehealth was the other thing. I never used telehealth because that's not the way I did it. I always went to the doctor's office, but then now people are getting forced to using it. And I think that's going to be that's a forced trend, because like we were just talking about, you have to use it. That's where they don't want you coming to the office, but people are going to see that and say, okay, well, that wasn't so bad. I'm used to using it. I might start using that instead of going to the doctor's office. So it kind of leads you down a different path.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Chip. I think it's going to speed up the digital transformation of organizations. So moving everybody to online presence, minimizing the brick and mortar framework. And then also on the other side is being able to hopefully continue to care about people. So this is bringing that to the forefront again. So caring about people, saying thank you, please, helping other people.
Well, and they're looking to, people are looking to us as technology leaders to be able to help set direction and communicate, approach and vision. And so, I think figuring out how do we take these things instead of going, see, I told you that disaster recovery plan was a terrible idea. I told you it was completely inadequate. You people are morons. You should have listened to me before. Right? But being able to say, okay, now with these insights that we have, how do we project that forward and help people think about some of those things to facilitate some of that transformation? Because I think that's going to be an opportunity for us as leaders in the community.
Right, so I don't know. I moved here about 2 months ago from the Northeast, and one thing I was surprised is some of the lessons that I call them regional lessons from 9/11, from Hurricane Sandy. Hell, even the bird flu not that long ago. I'm surprised that we're still having the same conversations and learning the same lessons. So one lesson learned or takeaway I'd like to see the community take is learning the lesson. Right, and building in stronger, more realistic continuity plans, so we don't get caught off guard like the way we were.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be an important lesson that we do learn from this. We focus so much on disaster recovery or application recovery, and nothing broke. Nothing has been taken away from us. It's all on the people side. So it's a pure play of the people side of business continuity that now comes to the forefront. And it's something that's not necessarily been well served. On the members in transition, I made the comment too about not only is it business continuity, it's succession planning. So at what point do you start to separate people? What's the order of execution of who do you want not together at the same time? How are you going to manage your staff so you can continue to function? I think those two pieces on the people side are going to take a much greater importance and probably be some employment opportunities as we're going forward, because not sure a lot of companies spend a lot of time never thinking about that kind of stuff. Well, no, it got tossed in their face. They're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Don. You know, one of the two things that I was thinking of is, one is that companies will probably and hopefully still continue to find creative ways to enable, shared space, reduce cost in that way in terms of facility, brick and mortar, like Ron said, allow people to be a little bit more mobile in general, because I think that that's a work-life balance to begin with, and it really does help with retention, employment, and finding people. But then in addition to that, what I've seen, and it doesn't have to be in big technology companies or any of our big companies with technology initiatives, but just the spirit of ideas. I mean, think about our restaurants and all of our small businesses that are coming up with all these creative ways to still offer some aspect of their service to keep themselves afloat. I think that just creativity that we're starting to see, I hope that it continues. I think of Charlotte as a pretty creative market where there are think tanks and innovation hubs, and so hopefully that continues to be a part of just our culture beyond this.
That's terrific. Jeffrey, do you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Can you speak a little louder?
Yeah, sometimes I gotta do the Fonzie on my computer, so sometimes it gets better. Is that better?
It's much better, yes.
Yeah, sometimes I gotta wake it up a little bit. So, so as I work for Novant Health, so I'm really in tune with all the virtual health that's going on, and how people are starting to use that. What it's really taught us is that we have to really pay attention to behavioral changes. Like what is this pandemic really forcing our consumers and our patients to do, where we need to adapt as technologists to support them. And we're really seeing a lot of people using our virtual visits a lot more than they have in the past. We've always had those for about 3 years, the ability to go online and actually do a virtual visit, but people never used it because they just didn't know how. It wasn't something that was really important to them. I think it was Chip that was talking about that. But now we're seeing behavior change because of what we're faced with as a society. And so we're making adjustments as well. So we just introduced TytoCare, which is devices you can hook up to your phone so you can actually do a more in-depth visit with a provider. So they can see down your throat, they can take your, you can register your temperature, you can do your vitals, so you can do an entire checkup without ever leaving your home, which is becoming more and more how we're becoming a connected house from a healthcare standpoint. So, but what we've done is, from an IT perspective, we often lose sight of what the consumer wants, and we try to force technology on people. So we've really taken a consumer-centered focus around, hey, what is the design thinking around this technology? What is the experience mapping around this technology, and how do we make that better? So I think that's one of the areas that we've really focused on based off what we're learning through this pandemic.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. So I want to respect everybody's time. I know we've booked an hour. I have two more things that I think would be good for us to kind of talk about. One is, do you have any suggestions about how we could make a future virtual SIM meeting better? Is there something that we could have done better this time? Can we do a little bit of a retrospective on this, to use Agile terms? So how can we make this better than what we did this time?
Hi, this is Dayal. I think one thing would help, probably having some draft agenda possible to just kind of steer the direction. That would be one thing I would suggest.
Love that, and happy to do that. So thank you for the suggestion. Appreciate it. What else?
Maybe a 20-page PowerPoint slide. I'm just kidding.
Wait, how do I kick Chip out of this meeting?
No, I think just a little practice with the tool is very helpful, which we're all getting these days. So we all should be 100% better at using this thing than we were yesterday.
Yeah, hey Pete, just to build on that, and no pun intended on this about using the tool, but the built-in poll features here make it really easy to do a quick and easy icebreaker about taking time for everyone to talk. You could vote about what leftovers everyone is going to have for dinner tonight.
Yeah, I was about to say that. That's a good point. That we ought to use more polling.
I did not even think of that at all. And now I just pulled it up and I see it's possible to do that. So maybe the next time I'll have to figure out how to do that. Thank you, TJ, for suggesting that.
I do have one real suggestion. So one thing I've learned in owning WebEx and things for a number of years is that if you have large groups, there were features of being able to turn the person off as they're entering the rooms, because you'll get a lot of feedback and things like we're getting right now. And people, they automatically will leave it on. If you have very large audiences, there's other features that are more for training where you can just host the meeting and you have one presenter, everybody comes in, it's mute, and they cannot take themselves off of mute. So there's other features out there for the more advanced services of Zoom and WebEx for larger groups. Larger groups suck like this because everybody will take themselves off mute and you'll hear all kinds of noise.
That's a good point. And it is possible. And I was kind of playing that by ear tonight, figuring out, should we mute everybody or not? I mean, there's definitely a feature built into Zoom that lets you mute everybody, and then people can either unmute themselves, or as the organizer, I could say, no, you can't. To me, it wasn't too distracting tonight, but I get your point, Chip. I think that's a valid point. We've got just a couple of minutes left here. And what I'd like to do next, and by the way, two other things. One is if you think of something to make it better, please email me. I'd love to know. And I'd like to be able to hear about that. That's tom@brighthillgroup.com. You probably have my email and some of the stuff you've already gotten. The other is I'll just point out that from the MIT meeting, I realized that there was a need for help with some of this stuff. And I put together a cheat sheet on using video at home. And you can get that on my website, either tomcooper.us/workfromhome or Bright Hill Group/workfromhome. So I just wanted to mention that in case you want to check that out. The last thing I wanted to do, though, is I wanted to ask you, what was valuable for you about the last 55 minutes? What was a value add for you in just being a part of this conversation today?
Can I just say that it was wonderful to see other adults outside of my home and have great conversation, stimulating conversation, and it felt like I left my home and I didn't, and I was safe and I'm still healthy and everybody's protected. But I think it was even better than I anticipated. So that was a big plus for me.
Thank you,
Betsy.
I echo the same sentiments. I think it was very pleasant to have this meeting outside of the working hours and able to connect with the individuals.
Yes, I agree as well. I mean, Tom, has anybody talked about setting up Slack organization or something for Sim Charlotte?
I don't think we've had that conversation, but I love the idea. We should definitely kick that kind of idea around with the board and see if how we would go about doing that.
Yeah, I would
like the
personally
concept.
love to see something like that.
Love the concept. Thanks for bringing that up. Somebody else, what's been great for you about this conversation today?
It's Elizabeth. I think that the fact that we pulled this off, or rather you pulled this off within just a matter of few days was excellent. And the Sim Women group does have a Slack channel, so could be open for other groups as well.
Okay, love to know more about that at some point. So terrific. Somebody else, what was valuable about this time together?
The sense of community. I mean, reminding ourselves and each other that we're not in this alone.
Great.
Another example that the show must go on.
The show must go on. That's right. Well, so often it does, right?
Well, I certainly appreciate everybody getting together as well, just seeing faces and familiarity and talking about things. And I love the humor, so that's always welcome and appreciated to bring that in. We don't have to be stuffy and formal by any means in these meetings and any of our group conversations or get-togethers. So that's very much appreciated.
Well, that's terrific. I want to respect everybody's time. I'm sure you have family stuff going on. I'm sure I probably do too. So would love to reconvene one of these, and we'll talk as a board about how we can do that. Maybe we'll figure out a way to get some feedback from folks. Don't want to be, I know that there are 1,000 of these kinds of things going on right now, and it's kind of hard to make space in your calendar for some of these things. But I do believe that that community connection is super valuable. And so we want to make sure that we support that and encourage that. And it's tough because, you know, as geeks, we're not necessarily as sociable as, as some of the other folks out there. I got a kid who's in engineering, and boy, he's like, he said to me, I don't understand it. People all of a sudden are living the way I like to live, and they're calling that a quarantine. So anyway, folks, thanks so much for making the time to be here. We look forward to seeing you at a future gathering soon. Take
Thanks
care,
for
everybody.
organizing.
All right, thanks for organizing it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Great job,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.